I read.
Okay. Yeah, we can get started on Revelation 2:1. I started recording. Okay. Pretty much when we go into this, Revelation chapter 2 and chapter 3 are pretty much the letters that was told, or the letters that John the Revelator had wrote that Yahushua had ordered him to write to these 7 different churches. And when you look at the characteristics of these 7 different churches, we have to keep in mind of ourselves and the things that we're doing. Because when you look at the majority of these churches, he says a few good things about it, but then he cursing them out for something that they're doing as well. There's only one church out of all 7 that had a completely good report, and that was the church in Philadelphia. Okay, brotherly love. Exactly. But the other churches, he had good things to say, but he warned them. Okay, he was giving these churches spiritual warnings if they didn't correct these certain things that they flawed on that could cost them their salvation. Okay, so it was on my spirit to study in this and go into detail, looking at the things that was going on within these churches and looking at it like, oh, are we doing this or are we not doing this, or are we doing this or are we not doing this? So we can get started on Revelation chapter 2, verse 1. It's a very interesting 2 chapters when you read it.
All right. This is Revelation chapter 2, verse 1. Unto the angel of the church of Ephesus, write.
And the word Ephesus means permitted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, permitted.
Gone.
These things saith he that holdeth the 7 stars in his right hand.
Yeah, when you go into those, his right hand, ultimately that's Yahushua, because that was reiterated from Revelation, the 1st chapter, when John had received the vision of the Son of Man, and we always read it with a garment clothed down to the foot, hair is white. It says he had those 7 stars in his right hand. All right, which those 7 stars are really synonymous for those angels, the archangels. Okay, but when you read this here, when he's going into each and every angel in these different churches, that's not pertaining to the 7 stars. These are actually the bishops, the heads over those churches. Okay, and I got precepts to back that up, but go ahead.
All right. Who walketh in the midst of the 7 golden candlesticks.
Mm-hmm.
I know thy works, and thy labor, and thy patience, and how thou canst not bear them which are evil.
Right. And when you go into this first church he's writing this to is the church in Ephesus. Again, which the other state means permitted. Okay, now he's saying good things. You can't bear them that are evil. You know how they hate evil, and that's what a righteous man is supposed to do. The scriptures say to hate the evil and love the good. So Ephesus was the most popular church out of all the churches. Out of all those 7 churches, it was the most popular. It was founded by Paul, but John the Revelator, before he got casted into the island of Patmos, he actually dwelled in Ephesus. And Ephesus had the most bishops that was there. It had the reputation outwardly from all the other churches like they got it. You know what I'm saying? Again, John the Revelator lived there. He lived among those brothers. So that church was known for their amount of spirituality. And I believe the bishop of that church was Timothy, if I'm not mistaken. But again, there was a number of bishops that was over there. But he explained to them pretty much how they couldn't bear that which was evil. So, as King David said, the zeal of the Lord hath eaten me up. That was the mindset of those brothers out there in the church of Ephesus. You know what I'm saying? That was on fire. You got it.
And thou hast tried them which say they are apostles and are not, and hast found them liars.
Mm-hmm. A lot of that was going on back then too. As it was written, beware of those that come in unawares. All that was going on when the ancient apostles had wrote that in those different epistles, man. He was pretty much going into what was going to happen after all the apostles had died off and as the churches continued. Because all that was going to come in, and there was going to be grievous wolves that was going to come in among the circle.
And that's proof Yahushua is with you getting on other Israelites.
That's right.
You see what I'm saying? Because people
right.
get mad, but it's right there. Mm-hmm. That's a legacy. That's been happening now.
That's right.
It was getting on other Jakes.
Straight up. You got it.
All right, verse 3. And has borne and has patience, and for my name's sake has labored and has not fainted.
Again, they was on fire. Again, this is the church of Ephesus. This is a highly known church that we all know about. When you go into all the other churches, you might think like, okay, I really don't know too much history about these churches. But when you go into, we got the book called Ephesians. Mm-hmm. You don't have a book called, Philadelphia or Sardis or whatever. Yeah. You have Ephesians. Mm-hmm. So it was a very highly known church throughout Asia Minor. You got it.
Verse 4. Nevertheless, I have somewhat against thee, because thou hast left thy first love.
That's right. Baba Kashaw, could you put up Malachi chapter 2, verse 14? Okay, so as he had explained the good, you on fire. You can't bear them that are evil. He's talking to this church saying, look, you on fire, but check this out. There's still something that you airing. It says thou hast left thy first love. All right, and that's pretty much past tense, meaning you left your first love. And that's a big deal, especially when you go into what that first love ultimately is. You know, you got that, Yadaka? Okay.
Malachi 2:14, it says, yet ye say, wherefore? Because the Lord hath been witness between thee and the wife of thy youth, against whom thou hast dealt treacherously, yet is she thy companion and the wife of thy covenant.
Yeah, the wife of thy covenant ultimately goes into wisdom. You know, that goes into that woman. But ultimately, what is the wisdom? Following the ways of Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai. Because you read it in Deuteronomy, the 4th chapter, when he's telling us pretty much how he gave us the law to be judges over the nations. He says to hold on to it, for this is your wisdom and your understanding that you shall profess among all the nations. You know, so when you go into how that church in Ephesus lost our first love, whether it was physical wisdom they was losing, there was a plethora of things that they might not have been doing. They might have been unmerciful within judgment. All right. They might have been too lax, might have been on fire. But when it came to things that was going on within the church, like people might have noticed it. When I was doing my history on Ephesus, again, it was the most known church. And people from the outside looked at this church like they got it. But when it was pretty much they came in and seeing how they handled things, the scopea was on and they would see how they conducted themselves sometimes. Like, oh, shoot. Like, for example, you know, whatever camp it is, a brother might come in and he might scope some things out and be like, oh, snap, I didn't know this was going on. And we all got those issues that go on among the churches. Everybody's going to see something. You know what I'm saying? But that was what was going on in Ephesus. There was things that was happening within the inner walls of the city that was messing with Yahweh Shai. He says, thou hast left thy first love. So just as a constant reminder to all of us, because we understand that these 7 churches, all right, were actually churches that existed back then, but those characteristics still exist today. And a lot of it needs to be weeded out, especially since we know our Lord's getting ready to come back. All right, we need to make sure, speaking to myself first and foremost, that and since I'm talking about it, that we're being committed to wisdom, to this first love. You know, that's it on that, Yadaka. You can keep going, Elder.
All right, this is Revelation 2 and 5. Remember therefore from whence thou art fallen, and repent and do the first works, or else I will come unto thee quickly, and will remove thy candlestick out of his place, except thou repent.
That's right. That's right. And that candlestick ultimately represents the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. All right. And it says, I'm going to read this from my notes really quick because I wrote this down. I put, this church is being called upon to remember, mind, and observe from what degree they were fallen, in order to bring them under a conviction and acknowledgement of their deeds and a sense of their present state, and to be quickened their desires after a restoration of their former one. So pretty much when you go into that, you remember when you first came into the truth, you was on fire. You was on fire for lessons, wanting to study, reading, do all of that. And throughout time, that could wither away. You know, and this is the point where you might be doing a bunch of lessons, but you ain't reading, or you reading, but you ain't doing your lessons, or you might be seen outwardly as a guy that's in the spirit, but when it comes to judgment and wisdom and you being hella unmerciful with judgment, you know what I'm saying? He says, remember where they're all fallen. You know, so this church fell from somewhere. That's why he said repent. And ultimately to repent means to be sorry, but also go back into the first estate where you was before. You know, repenting is an action, not just saying Salakia, but doing that action. And Yahweh Shah is coming back quickly. He said, before I remove thy candlestick away. Right. You know, so were they praying? Were they not praying no more? You know what I'm saying? And I'm not asking a question. I'm just saying there's a number of things that this church might have been erring in. You know what I'm saying? To the point where he said, I'm going to take your candle away from you. And that's a big deal. And this is one of the churches that are written of in the scriptures that Paul wrote a letter to. You know? So we can only imagine the ones that ain't written of, the ones that ain't known about. You know? You got it, Elder.
All right. Verse 6. But this thou hast, that thou hatest the deeds of the Nicolaitans, which I also hate.
Yeah, so they were known. They hated the deeds of the Nicolaitans. And when you go into the Nicolaitans, and later on, it's more info that's going to come out about them. But the Nicolaitans was a very sinister group that was out there that infiltrated different churches. When you go into the Nicolaitans, they followed the doctrine of Balaam when it goes to Baal Peor. All right, they were pretty much allowing harlots within the place where they congregated. They was having orgies with different women, and they actually infiltrated the different churches. So the church in Ephesus knew about the Nicolaitans, and they hated them. All right, again, because it's wicked. All right, go ahead.
All right. Verse 7. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. To him that overcometh will I give to eat of the tree of life.
That's right. That's right. And that tree of life is pretty much, ultimately when you go into it, we understand that that's the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. All right. If we continue to overcome, he's going to add more unto us. You know what I'm saying? And also that that transfers to those newer bodies if we continue to do the things we need to do. That's eternal life right there. The tree of life. You got it.
To him that overcometh will I give to eat of the tree of life, which is in the midst of the paradise of Yahweh.
That's right. That's right. And I got a quick precept. Let me see. Hey, Shalom, man. I believe it's in 2nd Ezra 2:11. Shalom, shalom. We're in Revelation chapter 2 in verse 7 right now. So this here is 2nd Ezra chapter 2 verse 11. Let's see here. Trying to find the point. Okay, that must be the wrong precept. It's all good. We can keep going, Adam.
All right. This is verse 8. And unto the angel of the church in Smyrna write, these things saith the first and the last, which was dead and is alive.
That's right. So the first and the last, which was dead and is alive, is Yahushua. And then again it says written to the angel in the church of Samaria. Again, this isn't talking about a physical angel. Because if that's the case, why would Yahushua have John write a letter to an angel that's already in the heavens? You know what I'm saying? It's not talking about no physical angel. Matter of fact, in Galatians chapter 4, verse 14, I'm going to pull that up really quick, just to clarify that it's not talking about a physical angel, but it's talking about an individual.
You want me to read it for you?
Yeah, con. Galatians 4 and 14. And these are things we already know. You know what I'm saying? But just to clarify, when we read this here, this isn't an actual physical angelic deity that was in the heavens that he wrote it to. And a physical angel had to receive the letter. Yahushua wrote it. Here you go. I'm about to give it back to this being in the heavens. You got it, Yadaka.
This is Galatians 4 and 14. It says, in my temptation which was in my flesh, ye despise not, nor reject it, but receive me as an angel of the Most High, even as Yahushua.
That's right. And this is Paul. Paul says, I was received as an angel of the Most High. And Paul was he was a bishop. He was an apostle. It means a messenger. That's all it is. It's going into the messenger. And also, too, let's see here, in 2nd Ezra, there's one more precept that I want to pull out going into that angel. I believe it's in 2nd Ezra chapter 2. Let me see here if I got it written. Let's see here. Okay, it's all good. We can keep going.
All right. Verse 8. And unto the angel of the church of Smyrna write, these things saith the first and the last, which was dead and is alive. I know thy works and tribulations and poverty, but thou art rich. And I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan.
Now, ultimately, when you go into that, because again, we use the scripture going into those false Jews that are there, which again, it is talking about them too, because they live in our land and they're calling themselves the Jews. But back there around that time, you had the different brethren that was being persecuted by the high priests, by the scribes and the Pharisees and the Sadducees. You know what I'm saying? So he's talking about those individuals that pretty much had that outward appearance of being a Jew. You know what I'm saying? But inwardly they wasn't. Again, they was killing the prophets, man. Matter of fact, Romans chapter 2, verse 28. You got it? Okay. Come on.
Because Romans chapter 2, verse 8, it says...
Start at verse 27.
Verse 27. So, Romans chapter 8, verse 27 says, and shall not uncircumcision, which is by nature, if it fulfill the law, judge thee, who by the letter and circumcision does transgress the law.
Now remember, a lot of the persecution now that was going on with the churches because they were teaching about Yahushua, which those wicked scribes and Pharisees didn't want to hear about. They didn't want to accept them as being Hamashiach. And also, too, they was allowing Gentiles, they were teaching to the Gentiles, which were the Israelite foreigners. And the big deal of it was going into circumcision. All right, they were saying, why you letting these uncircumcision come into this and learn? You know, you remember when I believe it was Yahushua that somebody had brought an uncircumcised into the sanctuary, into the temple, and they had pretty much got on their case about it. So the uncircumcision and the circumcision was a big deal. You know, pretty much all of us at a point in time was that. And just like those 7 churches, a lot of them was grafting in. They was bringing in those Israelite foreigners because that message was being pushed all throughout Asia Minor. And you had a lot of Israelites that weren't circumcised that was being taught. So you had a lot of those guys within the synagogues that was condemning them for it and persecuting them and putting a lot of them to death. You know? Go ahead.
Verse 28. For he is not a Jew, which is one outwardly, neither is that circumcision, which is outward in the flesh.
Yeah, it's not about the flesh, man. All right, and a lot of individuals, especially today, and they skirts being lifted, all right, they want to make it seem like it's an outward thing. Mm-hmm. Now, we understand Israelites are Israelites by blood, you know, but it's not just a color thing. You know what I'm saying? It's not an outward thing. It's not just a fringe thing about your fringes. You know, it's about being an Israelite inwardly, understanding what the scriptures are talking about and understanding how to judge. All right? And they didn't have that back then. And we see how that translated over, and they was being wicked, and they pretty much brought those Edomites in and taught them their ways. And then lo and behold, now they over there in our holy land doing the same thing that our people was doing back then, except they ain't even of the fold. And they calling themselves Israelites now.
Verse 29, it says, but he is a Jew, which is one inwardly, and circumcision is that of the heart.
That's right. That's right. It's a mentality, man. It's a mindset. Okay? Now, when you go into this church right here, Smyrna, you had an individual who was the bishop who went by the name of Polycarp. All right? And he was actually persecuted by those Jews. He was persecuted. All right? He actually had a dream one night that his pillow was on fire. And he woke up like, what the heck, patting on his pillow? And it was good. And a few days afterwards, he died by fire by those Israelites being persecuted. You know, so he actually had a vision of his death before it came to pass. So we kind of see going into this particular church, going into the synagogue of Satan, which was actually those wicked Israelites that was pushing the law, but they weren't following it. And we see how they actually persecuted the bishop of that church. They wicked, you know. I think that's pretty much it on that, Yaquad. We can continue back to Revelation 2.
All right. This is Revelation 2 and 10. Fear none of those things which thou shalt suffer. Behold, the devil shall cast some of you into prison, that ye may be tried, and ye shall have tribulation 10 days.
See what I'm saying? Now it's going into fear none of those things because the bishop of that church got put to death. So just imagine, you know what I'm saying? Like, Lord forbid, but we understand things that are come. If one of our higher-ups or any brother, for that matter, got persecuted for Yahweh's sake, you know, you going to really sit back and think, whoa, reality is hitting. All right? Because we know they're getting ready to come. They're getting ready to
get taken. I think we should fast that one, a day.
It only makes sense. Yeah. You know, they did it when Peter was in jail.
I was just about to say.
Yeah, when Peter was locked up, the whole body fasted, and that's when an angel came in there and unlocked the door, and Peter ran out.
I told my son that the other day. I said, if I get taken, you know what I'm saying, you're gonna have to, I want you to fast. You and your mom will have to fast for a day. You know what I'm saying?
That's the spirit.
And then I was thinking that say brothers should do that, and then that's in the scriptures.
That's the time of Acts, man. It's the time of Acts.
After that fast was done, he came knocking on the door. They was like, what the?
I do remember
Peter Ghost.
I didn't even think about that.
And you remember too, John. That was when James was put to death. Yeah. So James was actually put to death by these guys.
That was like the first verse. Yeah.
Right, and it was really Herod. But you had those wicked guys that was still, he was for them too.
You mean John, right?
No,
James.
Yeah, the brother of John's.
Okay.
Yeah, he got killed with the sword. He got thrust through.
Oh, yeah.
Because what Peter, it doesn't necessarily. I mean, you can extrapolate. It doesn't necessarily say they was fasting, but they were all in one house praying
Right.
at
You
that
know
time.
they was
But they was probably fasting or
Yeah, of
something.
course.
You know what I'm saying? I got that for you if you want me to.
Yeah, read. I thought it said that they went on. Let's see. Let's read it.
This is Acts chapter 12. I'm going to start at verse 7 to read down. It says, "And behold, the angel of the Lord came upon him, and a light shined in the prison. And he smote Peter on the side and raised him up, saying, Arise up quickly. And his chains fell off from his hands. And the angel said unto him, Gird thyself and bind on thy sandals. And so he did. And he saith unto him, Cast thy garment about thee and follow me. And he went out and followed him, and wist not that it was true which was done by the angel, but thought he saw a vision. When they were past the first and the second ward, they came up unto the iron gate that leadeth into the city, which opened to them of his own accord. And they went out and passed on through one street. And for what the angel departed from him, we're coming up to the point. And when Peter was come to himself, he said, Now I know of a surety that the Lord has sent his angel and hath delivered me out of the hand of Herod, and from all the expectation of the people of the Jews.
Right. And Salakia, you right. I think when I read it, I had that thought that they might have all been fasting. So Salakia for putting that out there, because it doesn't necessarily say it, but there's a strong possibility that members were, but going into that praying without ceasing, the whole body had done that.
Exactly.
And Peter was out of jail. But the main point going into it, though, is that they was thrown into prison for the testimony of Yahushua.
Right.
And we understand that that's coming here soon. Just like it happened with our ancient forefathers that we're reading about. Polycarp, the head of the church in Smyrna, which we're reading about, again, he was put to death. And the next verse went into, hey, when you're thrown into prison, when that happens to you, just keep the testimony. Because he clearly said, look at your bishop, what happened? It's going to happen to you too. And again, we extrapolate that and look at today. Because it's a reason why he wrote these letters to these churches, but it's still written for us to understand today. The scriptures say, all things are written aforetime for our learning. All right, so the same attributes these churches might have had, the same things that was told to these different churches, we have to receive it like we're those churches. Because we could have been some of those guys that were in some of those churches back then. You got it, Elder.
I'm going to read verse 10 again. It says, Fear none of those things which thou shalt suffer. Behold, the devil shall cast some of you into prison, that ye may be tried, and ye shall have tribulation 10 days. Be thou faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life.
That's right. If somebody could pull up Sirach, I believe, is it Sirach 4:28? My man, the water. Be thou faithful unto death. Again, Polycarp was faithful unto death. So you think back at that, it doesn't say Polycarp in the scriptures, but when you research that church, Polycarp was put to death by those Israelites back then. He was persecuted by Jake. They had power to throw him in prison, went to different governors. That actually took place.
So he was the head of the church in what, Smyrna?
In Smyrna.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it's a reason why Yahushua stated that. You're going to be thrown in prison, and they mentioned the synagogue right before it. Because a lot of times, even when Peter and John was on trial, after they healed that pretty much man with that issue, he couldn't walk. That lame man, they was brought to the Sanhedrin.
It's crazy because Smyrna, when I was doing the research on myrrh and bitter, it means it goes to bitter. Bitter.
Exactly.
And that was bitter. That was a bitter time.
Yep. And this was actually a very small city too.
Yeah.
It didn't really have too much influence throughout Asia Minor, but they were still on fire for the word. It was more so a smaller camp.
Right.
How you look at it, what I'm saying? A smaller camp that was known though, it made me feel like the Mississippi.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They a known camp, it's small,
Yeah.
but it's still like a high powered camp.
Even like Smyrna, that's the spirit, because I was researching that. Me and the brother Yashimoth was going into some research on it. It's like that was considered, like Smyrna and Ephesus was pretty much competing to be like the head city of Asia Minor at that time. So you can just imagine like of all the BS and the idolatry that was taking place at that time. Just kind of like how Corinth was. Just seeing everything, man. Like, man, bro.
Yeah.
It was a lot of stuff going on, man. Like, just imagine Las Vegas or something like that.
It's like
people
them
just coming out
Nicolaitans
there.
we was just talking about. They was trying to infiltrate and spread them false doctrines.
Yep. It's crazy.
Get our people to eat foods that sacrifice to idols.
Yeah, that's right.
But I got this for you.
Gone.
In Sirach 4:28, it says, Strive for the truth unto death, and the Lord shall fight for thee.
Strive for the truth unto death, and the Lord shall fight for thee. All right, now we understand it's easier said than done. You know what I'm saying? We could all be like, man, strive for the truth, for the death, and you good. But when you put in that situation, it really takes faith and belief.
Yep.
When you're really faced with the reality that you could get put to death in a very gruesome way for the testimony of Yahushua, that should really strike fear in your heart, to fear the Lord. Not the people that do it, but the fear of the Lord, man. And that these men believed.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like, bro, Esau getting ready to crack down, bro.
Yeah, he mad.
He mad, bro.
Just like Yahushua told his disciples in Luke 21.
Right.
Can I get a little piece of this?
Baba Kashaw.
And then we could go back. I don't want to segue off too much. This is St. Luke 21 and 12. It says, but before all these, they shall lay their hands on you and persecute you, delivering you up to the synagogues and into prisons, being brought before kings and rulers for my name's sake, and they shall turn to you for a testimony.
Right. That's
and when
right.
you go into the word testimony, it goes into the word being a martyr. So just for having this truth, hey, that is a big potential that you could end up being put to death for this truth.
Right.
Now we know the scripture says that some men ain't gonna see death till they see the kingdom of heaven, but it's gonna be some men that gonna have to actually strive into death.
That's right. That's right. And yeah, beautiful point. Because you got a lot of these guys in these other camps that don't know what the hell they asking for. Going to these different places in front of CNN and trying to make themselves known to Esau. You know, in their minds, it's a mighty work. But they don't see the weight and the gravity because they haven't been really persecuted yet. They don't really see. That's why it makes me think about, James and John when the mother, that's the spirit. Might as well pull it.
On your back, man.
Con. Because they really ain't thinking about that. When James and John's mother asked Yahushua, saying, can one of my sin on thy right and sit on thy left? And Yahushua said, you know not what ye ask for. You know? He said, for it ain't up to me, for it's up to my Father. You know, if you're willing to drink, matter of fact, if you got it, let's get it.
I got it.
Because these other guys don't know how Esau's getting ready to come. They think their physical guns are going to be enough, and they think the spirit of the Lord is going to be with them when they try to go guns blazes, Guns and Roses, man. It don't work out like that, bro. They ain't been persecuted, bro. They ain't had a guillotine in front of them, man. But they out there trying to make themselves known. They don't understand the weight of it, man. They don't know what the hell they asking for, bro. And it's really, at the end of the day, we understand that it's part of the story and it was written and it was ultimately meant for the great men, the men of understanding, the men of great millstone to be revealed. We understand. But we still look at it as, man, these jakes don't know what the hell they asking for, man. You got it.
That's why it's important, even us, even us within Great Millstone to really, really sit down and meditate and really think about what we are part of and what what we were a part of, man. Because we're not exempt to, like Elder Ashalam always says it, man. Like some of us, any of us can possibly die, man.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And be tortured, whatever the case may be. You know what I'm saying? It's just like Elder Yatazak be saying. I pray that Yahweh Shem Yahushua keeps the spirit on me, the same fervency that I have now, and even much more in that day, man. That's a spirit that we got to continue to pray for. But,
right, because you see these different churches that are written, and as many great attributes that was added to them, Yahweh still said, I have this against thee. And these are known churches. These were churches, man, that was written in Revelation. I still got this against you. So how much more can you look at yourself and be like, man, if you're saying I got this against me from this church that's written of, man, I got to make sure I'm doing what I need to be doing in the spirit. Because
he's spiritually talking to you.
He's talking to you.
Churches, This is Mark chapter 10. I'll start at verse 35 and read down. It says, and James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came unto him, saying, Master, we would that thou shouldest do for us whatsoever we shall desire. And he said unto them, what would ye that I should do for you? They said unto him, grant unto us that we may sit one on thy right hand and the other on thy left hand.
Yeah, so they like, man, hey, we want to be great, man, with you. In the kingdom, we want to be great with you, man. We want to sit alongside with you. Go ahead.
It says, in thy glory.
In thy glory. So they was like, man, we want to be on a level with you. Go ahead.
It says, but Yahushua said unto them, ye know not what ye ask. Can ye drink of the cup that I drink of?
And what is that cup going into? Persecution. All right? Because when you really sit back and think about how Yahushua was persecuted, man, a lot of times you'll say something, you on fire. Yeah. But when that stuff starts hitting, shit, this is real, man.
Hey,
it's real.
Because if I could say this, Yahushua even prayed to the Lord to take that cup away.
Yeah. Beautiful point.
Asked to take,
That's a beautiful point.
We don't know what spirit we're going to be operating in when that persecution hit down. So
Right.
we just got to pray daily that the Lord going to have the right spirit on us.
That's right.
You got to think, man. Peter told the Lord, I'll die for you. I'll kill for you, man. I'm here for you. You ain't nobody finna take you. What happened, man? Yahushua told Peter, man, look, you gonna deny me 3 times before the cock crowed.
Yeah,
I would say, but if he wouldn't have denied him, he wouldn't have been the head of the church.
exactly.
So it balanced itself out.
That's
you
right.
know what I'm saying?
That's right. And you could even equate this within things that you ask for from the Lord, man. I want to have endurance. I want to have faith. You go into this all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I want to have faith. But he's going to put you in that position where your faith is going to be tried.
Yep.
And that's part of the lower level of the cup that's going to be drinking. That's not even including the physical persecution of what is to come, you know? So he's saying you don't even know what you're asking for, you know?
Yep. It says, continuing on, it says, ye know not what ye ask. Can ye drink of the cup that I drink of, and be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with?
That's right. That's that purification process, man. That's that fire.
Trial, yep.
That's that trial. And he said, if you want to be considered as the great with me on that level, you're going to have to go through a high level of persecution, the baptism that I'm baptized with. And Yahushua, we all know how he was persecuted. You know what I'm saying? And it's crazy when you go into, we was talking about James before. And James, to a degree, fulfilled. He could die with the sword.
It's the precept is in there.
That
Acts 12.
That's in there. That's the spirit. And we just read Acts 12 earlier. And also, too, you look at John. When you research John, and it's also, I believe it's in the Josephus as well. When you research John, John was actually put on trial to be put to death. All right. They had a pot of oil that was boiling. And he actually stood up there and they pushed him into that pot of oil. And through the spirit of Yahweh Hashem Yahushua, a miracle happened where he wasn't burned. He was supposed to get put to death. When he wasn't burned, he didn't feel no burn. That's why they threw him in the island of Patmos in prison. Because they couldn't kill him. And it was ultimately meant for him to have this revelation. That's why. So they both were pretty much put to that trial process. And John came out of it. He believed. Got thrown into the cauldron and came out unscratched. You know? And that shows you too, just as a footnote, hey man, the Lord can intervene at any time. If we really fully believe and keep the faith like those men did, whether in death, or he can get to the point where he's going to intervene and still keep you alive. As for his purpose, because we ultimately see John's purpose while he was kept alive, because he written his last book. You know?
Yep.
It wasn't given to anybody else to write this. He was the last of the 12 apostles that lived. John, when you read about this in Revelation, when he wrote these letters to these churches, this was approximately around 95 AD. So this is 25 years after Jerusalem was sieged. This was way after his brother James passed away. John was old as hell when he received this revelation. He was the last of them to stay alive. He was the only one that didn't get persecuted unto death out of the 12.
Yahushua's favorite.
That's Yahushua's favorite.
Yeah. And it's crazy, man, because you got these scoffers, man, like that's over here talking about that scripture in Revelations 10, how it says that he would prophesy again before many kings and nations.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, showing reincarnation, you got these scoffers talking about, well, John, he did that. Like, bro,
He said he was going to come back.
bro. Like, no, he did not.
Right.
And then even too, with Polycarp, what you're saying, it was when you research Polycarp, because we was talking about him earlier, when he got thrown into that brazen, I believe it was like a brazen calf, I believe it was.
No, you talking about Antipas.
Oh, Salaki.
Yeah, that's Antipas.
My bad.
You putting all the secrets out, Ak. I wasn't ready for that yet. No, I'm playing, bro. I'm just messing with you.
Nah, I can tell you on here.
You good, bro.
Mark 10:39 says, and they said unto him, we can. And Yahushua said unto them, ye shall indeed drink of the cup that I drink of, and with the baptism that I am baptized withal shall ye be baptized.
And that's what we all agreed to when we came on the other side. You know, we said we can do it. You know, and hey, Lord willing, we all able to endure. But he talks about, okay, you talk about it, you're going to have to be about it. And that time is coming, boy, when Esau is getting ready to come down as a flood. Hey, man, we already had the victory through Yahushua Mashiach, but we got to make sure that we keep that crown on our head, man, that spiritual crown. Because Esau's going to try to come with great wrath. That flood, we see brothers on the news and everything. It's only a matter of time before they actually try to come and get us. It's only a matter of time, man. For real.
gonna be a hard victory, like one of them games where brothers go through all types of injuries and stuff.
Yeah.
But we're gonna win at the end.
That's
But
right.
Like it says in Matthew the 7th chapter, we gotta go through the straight gate, that
That's
position of difficulty to get the victory.
That's right. Man, bro, Polycarp had a vision of himself dying in his sleep right before he died in that same fashion, bro. So you can imagine in his mind thinking about it every day. Dang, I think this is the way I'm gonna die. You know, but it was actually beautiful at the end of the day because he has it in his mind. Okay, I know how I'm gonna die. All I gotta do is keep the faith. You know, keep pushing. We can go back to that in Revelation.
Verse 11. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. He that overcometh shall not be hurt of the second death.
That burning, now that's that fire. That's that fire that's gonna come. But we endure, we ain't gonna be able to be touched by it. You got it.
And to the angel of the church in Pergamos.
Woo! It's gonna be a little more weight on this one right here. This church in Pergamos, man. In Pergamum, Pergamum. When you go into the history on Pergamum, it was going down. Pergamum, pretty much. Excuse me. It was pretty much the whole political epicenter of Asia Minor. When certain judgments was made by the different emperors and the judges and rulers, they actually went over to Pergamum and sat upon the judgment seat to do certain judgments. All right. Go ahead.
All right. These things saith he which has sharp sword with two edges.
Yahushua.
I know thy works, and where thou dwellest, even where Satan's seat is.
Even where Satan's seat is. Now, when you go into that, you know, back in the world, it had us thinking that Satan sat over there. You know, but when you go into the history on Pergamum, it was a lot of idol worship that was going on. It was actually a hub of idol worship. When you, just as brief history, going into Pergamum, all right, you had three temples you had multiple temples, but you had three main temples or altars that was built to the deities that they worshipped. You had an altar that was built for the goddess Athena. You had an altar that was built pretty much for the emperor, who was considered a deity. They looked at themselves as gods. And you had the main one, which was the temple of Zeus. And that's actually where certain rulers or judges would go to, and they would sit upon that seat to make certain judgments. All right, where it says the seat of Satan, because this is where Rome had a huge influence, and those Roman emperors went over there. And we understand who those Romans are. They're Edomites, Satan, the devil, you know. Now, also, too, when you go into it, Pergamum had the reputation of being a gloomy place, but it also, too, had a library that rivaled the great library in Athens, Greece. So it had a lot of literature. A lot was going on in Pergamum. All right. But again, it was a huge source of witchcraft as well. There was actually a temple, a healing temple that was over there in Pergamum. All right. And pretty much if you were sick, if you didn't have any internal illnesses, you could go there to, quote unquote, be healed. And that temple was called the Asclepion. All right. And there was a sign outside that said death is not permitted here. So if you had a terminal illness, all right, you weren't allowed in there, because if you got a terminal illness, there's a chance that you ain't going to be able to make it through and you're going to die. And they didn't allow death to be in that temple. They would pretty much say it would unpurify the temple. So what you would do, you would drink a sedative. You would pay the priest a certain amount of money to be cured. You would drink a sedative and you would get put to sleep. And they would actually have you travel through underground caves and taverns in order to go to the temple upwardly from the basement, pretty much. All right, and while you was in there, there was different serpents. It was serpents that pretty much slithered all over the place. And they said that if a serpent had crawled over you while you was asleep, that's the god Asclepios pretty much communicating with you, giving you a diagnosis of your illness. And then when you go into Asclepius and when you Google him or something like that, you'll see he's a deity or a guy that has a staff with a serpent wrapped around it. That's where you get that Medicaid center. That staff with that circle wrapped around it.
The medical,
yeah. The medical, it goes back to Asclepius. Mm-hmm. And when they woke up from it, what they would have to do is they would actually have to get clay and mold the body part, whether it was your arm or leg or foot, head, whatever. You would shape that piece of clay into that body part that was hurt, and you would give it to that priest, that temple priest, to bless it. Because the city of Pergamum was known for the city that had all the temple keepers. They were called the temple keepers of Pergamum. And they were so-called blessed to the god Asclepius, and you would have your diagnostics and you would be healed in their eyes. Now, also, when you go into Pergamum and when you go into the history of it, whenever Babylon was sieged by Cyrus, all right, when Cyrus came and took over Babylon, you had those high priests that had dwelt in Babylon, and they pretty much had offered their sacrifices on pretty much it was a temple in ancient Babylon, which was called the ziggurat. You know, and they actually had the peak of it where they had all the different idols and all the different things that they worshipped, and it was called the Temple of the Blue Summit. All right. After Cyrus and them went in there and besieged everything, those temple keepers, those priests and those priestesses, they had fled out of there, and they had taken all their followers with them. And when you research it, they all fled to the land of Pergamum, way back before the Romans was in power, where they could actually keep their Babylonian worship going, their way of thinking and their influence. And throughout hundreds of years, that influence grown. And throughout time, like when the Persians and the Medes took power, when the Grecians took power, when the Romans took power, those Babylonian deities' names changed, but they still pretty much had those the same customs as those Babylonians. And when Julius Caesar got in power, and when he went over there, he seen how they did things. And he actually took a lot of them, a handful of them, and placed them over there with Rome. And they had those same priests, those Roman priests, pretty much had the same customs of the priest over in Pergamum in ancient Babylon. And it makes a lot more sense while this Roman infrastructure is Mystery Babylon, or the daughter of Babylon, the mother of all harlots, because they took their same priesthood. That ancient Babylonian priesthood is still into effect today, where we still see the image of the beast and how they doing all these things. That's an ancient custom. So when you go into Pergamum, and it's so much more history, but for time's sake, we don't got to get into it. But there was a lot of history that was going on in Pergamum, which gave it its reputation that it had back then.
Man, I got the precept.
Okay, Con, pull it up.
This is Isaiah. I'm sorry, I'm in Jeremiah, my bad. Isaiah chapter 40. Yeah, chapter 47. Yeah, chapter 47, verse 1. I'm gonna read verse 1 to jump down. And I'm gonna jump down. It says, "Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon, sit on the ground. There is no throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate." And I'm gonna jump down to verse 8. It says, "Therefore hear now, thou that art given to pleasures, that dwellest carelessly, that sayest in thine heart, I am, and none else beside me. I shall not sit as a widow, neither shall I know the loss of children, but these two things shall come to thee in a moment, and in one day, the loss of children and widowhood, they shall come upon thee in the perfection for the multitude of thy sorceries and for the great abundance of thine enchantments."
There we go. That's those sorceries. That's that wicked left-handed priesthood that we always go into. That's that left-handed priesthood, man. And they perform sorceries just like in ancient Babylon. All right, they worship deities like Marduk, the Marduk, and then Ishtar. All right, the same things was happening back then. Right. It just evolved and the names of it changed.
This is the new Canaan, basically.
That's right.
Because all of it goes back to Canaan.
And, Yep.
All that BS.
So it all goes back to Esau got his old MO. He took Ham's setup.
That's right.
Spiritually Sodom and Egypt.
That's right.
He just went hard with it. Just double it.
And we see when we read that verse there why it talks about where Satan's seat dwells. You know what I'm saying? Where those Roman emperors and judges sat to actually make certain judgments. That was the seat of Satan. Okay?
And that altar that was in Pergamum, it was an altar that they would sacrifice to their gods, and it was in the position and the shape as a throne.
Yep, that's right. That's right. Con, that's right.
It's crazy, man.
You got it.
Verse 12. "And the angel of the church in Pergamos write, These things saith he which hath the sharp sword with two edges. I know thy works, where thou dwellest, even where Satan's seat is, and thou holdest fast my name, and hast not denied my faith, even in those days wherein Antipas was my faithful martyr."
That's right. And when you go into the region of Pergamum and what was going on, it's very easy for that energy of that city to be put on you. So it's a big deal to hold your faith, to stay fast when you're in that region. Like, for example, we understand that the place that we live in is considered to be perverted and polluted. You know what I'm saying? That's where in Isaiah 19, it talks about that. How this is a perverted land. That was just like Pergamum. And a lot of those members of those churches pretty much had that polluted mind state just on what was going on around them. But it had mentioned Antipas right there. And he talked about how Antipas was a faithful martyr. Now, when you go into Antipas, which the brother had briefly talked about, when you go into him, Remember how we was going into the Asclepius and what was going on? You know, they had paid those people to be healed by that deity. Well, when Antipas was on the scene, he was the bishop around that time. This is around, this is before John the Revelator was thrown into the island of Patmos. Antipas was actually the bishop of the church in Pergamum. And what him and the brethren was out there doing, they were out there healing the sick through the spirit of Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai. They were raising the dead. They was doing all types of miracles. It got to the point where it was so critical that those temple keepers in Pergamum had went to the governors and the rulers that was within that region, complaining like, look, man,
too many people converting to that.
It's people converting into this doctrine right here. You know, they being
He
healed.
was a problem.
We ain't making no more money. We need to do something, right? He was a problem, bro. And they said it was so bad that the patients that was over there were being plagued by demons. Now, they said, when you research it, they said they believed that the gods was entering into them that they worship, pretty much saying, get away with Antipas. But it was demons that was plaguing people that was like, do something to Antipas, do something. Demons was complaining about him through those people that was there. Because they was under witchcraft when they was on that sedative and being brought up in there and sleeping. The serpents crawled on them. You know, they was being possessed by demons.
That's all these people.
All these people had that energy. They all have it. And just like they complained back then, they gonna complain about it with us. But when you go into it, those temple keepers had went to the governors over there. So what had taken place, those governors had brought Antipas over there to the judgment seat, over there in the temple of Zeus, where they actually had a bronze bull, or a bronze bull that was out there. You know, and that bronze bull sat on the, I can't really explain it because, it wasn't there, but you had the temple, you had the seat, you had the steps, and then you had the bull right there.
Kind of
and
like
then,
Molech, you know.
That's exactly what it was, but you had spectators that was around there to pretty much see. That's how somebody was persecuted. So what they did with Antipas, they had taken him and they had threw him inside of that bull. It was a hollowed out bull. Wherever your head would go, that's wherever the bull's head was, that's where your head was, and you would be tied up on the inside.
And you would be, the screams was like it was coming from the bull itself.
Right. There was
your head was by his mouth.
Mm-hmm.
So you would be screaming. It's like it's the bull, but
Yep.
light a fire under it, and it's you.
And you in there roasting. That's right. There were different tubes and all that where, like he said, it was screams come out and they was like, see, the God's alive. But you in there roasting. But when you research how Antipas was put to death, how he was in there getting cooked, the only thing he was saying when he was in there, he was crying out prayers to Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai for the brethren that dwelled over there. And that's how he died. Those were his last words. He constantly prayed to Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai to protect the brethren. Those were his last words. So that was written and that was received by the angels. And that was remembered and it was written about. And that's why Yahweh Shai said, remember Antipas. Remember my faithful martyr. Because that's how he died. He died in the spirit. He died in the faith.
And if I could add to that at the end, it's also documented that Antipas, whenever it was done, when the sacrifice, whatever was done to their guy, when they went in there to pull him out, he wasn't even burned up.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
You can look at it.
That's interesting.
He said he wasn't even burned. He didn't have no burns on him. His hair wasn't burnt.
Like during the time of Daniel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Because me and Yashima did a lesson on this chapter.
Right.
I remember it was an article I was reading. That's what it said. Like they pulled him out the bull. He wasn't even burnt.
So he just died, but he wasn't burnt or
Body
anything
was
like
intact.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Dang. Yeah. The water.
Wow.
The water for that one.
I can pull that part. But
Yeah. You can keep reading them, Elder.
All right. I'm going to read that last verse again. Verse 13, it says, and I know thy works, and where thou dwellest, even where Satan's seat is, and thou holdest fast my name, and hast not denied my faith, even in those days wherein Antipas was my faithful martyr, who was slain among you where Satan dwelleth.
I got it.
You said you got it?
Yeah, I got that account whenever you're ready. Just that part I was mentioning, but whenever you're done.
No. Go ahead and bring it out, and then I'll get back to verse 14.
Okay, this is from a website that I have here. It says the enraged pagan priests dragged the martyr Antipas to the temple of Artemis and threw him into a red-hot copper bull, where usually they put the sacrifices to the idols. In the red-hot furnace, the martyr prayed loudly to the Most High, imploring him to receive his soul and to strengthen the faith of the Christians. He went to the Lord peacefully, as if he were going to sleep. At night, Christians took the body of the martyr Antipas, which was untouched by the fire. They they buried him at Pergamum. The tomb of the martyr became a font of miracles and of healings from various sicknesses.
Wow.
That's what I'm saying. So much so that it was mentioned, it was documented.
Yeah.
You know?
Straight up.
All right. Verse 14. It says, "But I have a few things against thee, because thou hast there them that hold the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed unto idols, and to commit fornication."
Yeah, man, that was actually happening in Pergamum. When you go into pretty much going into Balaam and Balak, that goes into the following of Baal Peor. Oh, that was a stumbling block that was put on us back then. That Moabite deity, it was a bunch of women pretty much that was harlots that we was messing with back then around the time of Moses. When we was having victories and wars and everything, you know, pretty much there was a stumbling block that was cast on us, you know. And when you go into Baal Peor, that pretty much goes into sex deity, like controlling things through sex and putting that out there. So just like that, you had those temple harlots that dwelt in Pergamum that pretty much had the same personification as back then around the time of Baal Peor. You know what I'm saying? And also too, when you really just go into that, again, going into that history, it only makes sense when they were following the same customs as those Babylonians. Because those Babylonians, they still were doing things that was similar to what was going on when Baal Peor was worshipped.
Exactly.
You know, ancient Babylon had all of that going on. You got it, brother. I know you got it.
Just to back you up. This is Numbers 25:1. It says, "And Israel abode in Shittim, and the people began to commit whoredom with the daughters of Moab." Like you just said. And it says, "And they called the people unto the sacrifices of their gods, and the people did eat and bow down to their gods."
That's right.
And Israel joined himself unto Baal Peor, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel.
That's right. And you remember the account with Phinehas when pretty much, you know, one of the children of...
It.
Oh, okay.
Keep going.
Come.
Let me see.
No, it's a few verses afterward. It's more toward the end.
It's like towards verse 7.
Yup, it is 7. Numbers 25:7. It says, "And when Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest, saw it, he rose up from amongst the congregation and took a javelin in his hand, and he went after the man of Israel into the tent, and thrust both of them through, the man of Israel and the woman through her belly."
He had that zeal, man. He killed their ass.
Yup.
You know what I'm saying? Put wickedness away from Israel.
Exactly what it's going to say.
You know? Oh,
It says,
okay.
"So the plague was stayed from the children of Israel."
That's right. Put that wickedness away.
Yep.
And we see it was different times where Jake would always go off, worship other gods, worship the Lord first, and then worship other gods, and they fell off. It was an ongoing process. Even around the time right now we about to go into, man. Because just like in ancient Pergamum, they had the doctrine of Balaam pretty much going into it, which it wasn't called the doctrine of Balaam back then, but it was likened to what was going on.
Yep.
And that's what Yahweh Shai likened it to when he explained it. Because he had pretty much explained it in a way that we would understand. Look, you following the doctrine of Balaam, just like back then your forefathers.
Exactly.
And it infiltrated the church, man. It was in the city, and it infiltrated the church. Jake that was in the church was worshiping that stuff, man. Having orgies. And it goes into it when we keep going in Revelation. Was that it on that one?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
All right. Verse 16, it says, "Repent, or else I will come unto thee quickly, and will fight against them with the sword of my mouth."
Yeah, man. So Yahweh Shai pretty much like, you better get up out of that, man, or else I'm gonna kill you. Did you read the part about the Nicolaitans yet?
Oh, okay, I skipped that.
So you read it earlier, but I think it's going to mention them again.
It mentions it right here.
Oh, okay, I skipped verse 15, Salaki.
It's all good.
Revelations 2:15. It says, "So hast thou also them that hold the doctrine of the Nicolaitans."
So it's likening the doctrine of Balaam to the doctrine of the Nicolaitans.
It's like orgies.
They was having orgies. They was eating food sacrificed to idols willingly. We understand that it's stuff out here that you just gonna eat and you can't help it. It's just food. But they were actually willingly knowing it was for that, didn't care, and they were pretty much they was doing like it was okay. Like they was literally like, we know this is worship to that, and we gonna enjoy into worshiping. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it was when you go into it, it was like a do as thou wilt.
Exactly.
Right.
Pretty much like you can do whatever you want. The Lord, he you good. You know what I'm saying? Like it's kind of like now, honestly, like a modern day
That's
church doctrine.
exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. Because when again, Lord, when I do a lesson on, I know I was been supposed to never got to it, man. But a lot of this has influenced what we see within the Catholic Church today, or what was going on in Pergamum. When it goes into the Nicolaitans, which we read earlier about the Church of Ephesus, how they hated those deeds. When you go into Nicolaitans, it's a compound word. You got the word Nikaios, and you have the word Laios. And Nikaios pretty much means conquer or victory. And Laios is a Greek word which means people. So the Nicolaitans pretty much meant conquerors of the people. And they had a phrase that they went by that said, let us eat. You know what I'm saying? That's why they was eating those foods sacrificed to idols. They was all up into that, the orgies and the sex.
So
you know what I'm saying?
Since they conquered the people, they can do what they want.
You said what?
Since they conquered the people, they can do what
They
they
can
want.
do whatever they want. And they influenced, they infiltrated the church in Pergamum too. You know what I'm saying? They conquered a lot of them over that. You know what I'm saying? That's why Yahushua was cursing them out, man. If we would have left off after a lot of these churches, those 7 churches, we would have been through. Yep. It really makes you think like, man, another falling away had to happen, bro. Yeah. It had to happen or else we would have been through. If Yahushua would have came back around that time, he would have caught a lot of them like, look, that's why he's warning them the way he's warning them, man. Very severe. It was going down over there. It was going down.
You read about the Nicolaitans, how it was started by a man by the name of
Nicholas. Well, Nicholas was one of the 7 deacons that was set up. And it's pretty much out there. They're not saying that it's for sure. But when you do research the 7th deacon, which was Nicholas, all right, he did have righteous sons and daughters. His sons was on fire for the word. They were men of good report. And his daughters were virgins. But when you read it, I think he had sold his wife off or something like that. It sold his wife off, and a lot of men dibbled and dabbled into his wife. Forgot what the reason was for, but they say that's where they got that cult of the Nicolaitans from. And it was more so a misunderstanding. You know what I'm saying? It was a misunderstanding. They pretty much was like, see, Nicholas was on this. We finna do it. And again, that was more of a rumor. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? It's not really a for sure thing. It's more of a what if or maybe. But that is real history on Nicholas, though. They say the Nicolaitans came from one of the 7 deacons, Nicholas.
I got a real quick precept. 1 Corinthians 5 and 6. If glorying is not good, know ye not that a little leaven leaveneth the whole lump?
That's right. And that's why they, men like that got to be taken out. You know what I'm saying? Because that influenced the whole church, man. And when you go out into the history afterwards, going into the Catholic Church, which I'm not even going to talk about right now because it's a lot more, but it's very interesting when you actually go deep into what was going on in Pergamum, But we can continue, Elder.
All right. Verse 15, it says, so hast thou also them that hold the doctrine of the Nicolaitans, which thing I hate. Repent, or else I will come unto thee quickly, and will fight against them with the sword of my mouth. Verse 17, it says, he that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. To him that overcometh will I give to eat of the hidden manna, and will give him a white stone.
Yeah, when you go into that hidden manna, we ultimately know that represents the bread of heaven, Yahushua, this word. Right. We constantly overcome. He's going to allow us to abound more in the spirit. All right, especially if we overcome unto death, and we're going to receive even more. And this is synonymous for when he talked about to the other church that you're going to be able to eat of the tree of life. Now also too, when you go into that white stone, all right, around the time of the Roman Empire, all right, if you were pretty much put on persecution, or put on trial, not persecution, but trial, I should say, if you were to overcome that trial, you would receive a white stone. And that would ultimately mean being exempt from judgment. But if you received a black stone, that means that you put to death. And also, too, when you go into around the time of the Greeks, you had the Olympics that started with them. And if you overcame a race or overcame one of the trials in the Olympics, you would actually receive a white stone that would have your name engrafted in it, because that white represents victory. So you'll receive that with your name in it. So Yahushua is likening that to a trophy. You're going to have that white stone. You got it, Elder.
All right.
You good?
To him that overcometh will I give to eat of the hidden manna, and will give him a white stone, and in the stone a new name written.
See? In that stone. So Yahushua is looking back to what pretty much Yahushua was explaining things to them that they could relate to.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? In that stone, you're going to have a new name written. You know what I'm saying? But he's likening it to what was going on in the Olympics back then. Once you won a trial, you would receive a trophy, which was a white stone with your name engrafted in it. And that's synonymous for victory. You got it.
which no man knoweth saving he that receiveth it. And a lot of people always like to say, well, see, it say that it was going to be a name ready that don't know man know. Except the men that received the name.
Right. That easy.
The men that received the name going to know it.
They gonna know it.
Everybody else not going to know it. So, come on, man. You know what I'm saying? Read 2 more. Well, that's what lets you know it's a spiritual block there.
Right.
If you finish the sentence, you get the understanding. See, it say no man. Oh, brother. You know?
And that name goes beyond the actual name too.
Right.
It's your energy.
Yeah, come.
The elect would be the only ones that got it.
That's right. That's right. We talked about it at camp yesterday. How the elect are gonna have that glory. You know, it goes into the ultimate prize. That glory being a joint heir with Yahushua. We don't have that down here, bro. We preaching about it. We know in part and prophesying part, but we don't got it. That's what we're fighting for. You know?
I got a real quick precept.
Come.
This is Isaiah 56. I'm starting at verse 4. It says, "For thus saith Yahweh unto the eunuchs that keep my Sabbaths, and choose the things that please me, and take hold of my covenant."
Now, when you go into these eunuchs right here, this isn't talking about physical eunuchs. It's talking about all of us. Right. You know, pretty much being a eunuch. When a man was castrated, he was castrated so he could focus on one thing wholeheartedly, and the master that he served. And that's the spirit. We was talking about George Washington Carver yesterday, and how he had invented a bunch of different things. A lot of people don't know that he was a eunuch. That's why he was so focused on those inventions, and he came up with so many different things. It was brilliant because he didn't have no fleshly carnal things to worry about. So he's likening, like he's reading Isaiah 56, he's likening those eunuchs to being us. Spiritual eunuchs, because we're supposed to be one-minded to serve Yahweh B'Shem Yahweh Shai with our full heart.
Right.
You know?
It's like Yahweh Shai said, there's eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven.
That's right. That's right.
Verse 5, it says, "Even unto them will I give in mine house and within my walls a place and a name better than of sons and of daughters.
That's right.
I will give them an everlasting name that shall not be cut off."
That's right. And that even goes in the Wisdom of Solomon 3:14 as well, when it talks about the eunuch, and it says, he shall give him the special gift of faith, and he shall have an inheritance within the temple. You know what I'm saying? He shall have the special gift of faith, though. And that's to those men that are single-minded. You know, that's that. You gonna have that white stone, man.
That represents that glory too.
That's right. That's right.
Because you get the victory. And
yeah.
then that white stone with your name, that represents glory for triumphing over what you had to go to accomplish that victory.
Con. And we know it ain't gonna be no temple in the kingdom of heaven. So we understand you're not gonna actually be within that. You know, but as we're being measured, as it's written in Revelation the 11th chapter, because the temple in the kingdom of heaven is Yahweh and Yahweh Shai. Yep. It's talking about how we're gonna have an inheritance within that. And be with those joint heirs with Yahweh Shai when you go into that. Because Yahweh Shai was a spiritual eunuch. And if he's a spiritual eunuch, the men that come after him that preach that gospel and pretty much put their bodies as a sacrifice like him are going to be eunuchs as well. You know? Con, okay. We can keep going. And I'm going to just do chapter 2. Just for right now.
Yeah, we already discussed it.
God.
Verse 18, it says, "And unto the angel of the church of Thyatira write, These things saith the Son of the Most High, who hath his eyes like unto a flame of fire, and his feet are like fine brass. I know thy works, and charity, and service, and faith, and thy patience, and thy works, and the last to be more than the first.
Con.
Notwithstanding, I have a few things against thee."
Yeah, when you go into this church in Thyatira, it also had a name, pretty much Thyatira, when you go into the name, it pretty much means daughter. You know, and when you go into it, around the time of the Seleucid Empire, you know, when I got in my notes, Seleucus, the son of Nicanor, being at war with Lysimachus, it says, hearing that he had a daughter born, called this city Thyatira, which is the same thing as Thyatira, just another name for it. And it says, and which was before called Pelopia, and also Semiramis. So this city was called Semiramis at a point in time. And that name means daughter. And when he keeps reading, you'll see why it's called that. Go ahead.
All right. "Notwithstanding, I have a few things against thee, because thou sufferest that woman Jezebel, which calleth herself a prophetess, to teach and to seduce my servants to commit fornication."
See what I'm saying? The city was called. Again, he always used certain characteristics of the city to explain it to the church. They was called daughter, but you had pretty much, when it says suffered that woman Jezebel, we know it's not talking about Jezebel from Kings. but it was an energy that was placed pretty much. You had woman bishops over in the church. There was women that was bishops. And Paul clearly said, I suffer if not a woman to teach, nor absorb authority over a man. And a lot of people would try to say, well, that was only pertaining to the church in Corinth. No, man, he's talking in general, man. Because when you went into that, man, there was a lot of witchcraft that was going on. And it was a lot of, excuse my French, but fucking that was going on within that church. You know, they pretty much put that harlot vibe into the church. And that was going on. When you research the church in Thyatira, you know, a lot of men was lusting over these women that was in there, and they were losing focus on what the main prize was, man.
It's the same thing today.
Jake is doing it, like, you know.
That's why it's smart not to have them around, you know, like that.
See why the apostles talk about it so much, man. Like, they talk about their stories that they went through. It makes sense, man.
You know, you know, trying to show up, brothers talking crazy to brothers around women. Yeah,
That's right. That's right. You got it, Elder.
All right.
Can I get this real fast?
Come on.
Before we, I got that word Jezebel in the Greek. It says in Revelation 2:20, equivalent to a second Jezebel, the symbolic name of a woman who pretended to be a prophetess and who, addicted to antinomianism, claimed for Christians the liberty of eating things sacrificed unto idols.
Right.
And then when you get that word antinomianism, in Wikipedia it says antinomianism is any view which rejects laws or legalisms and is against moral, religious, or social norms, or is at least considered to do so.
Right.
In Christianity, an antinomianism is one who takes the principle of salvation by faith and divine grace to the point of asserting that the saved are not bound to follow the moral law contained in the Ten Commandments. That's Christianity in a nutshell.
That's Christianity in a nutshell. They got women deacons and everything.
What was that off of?
Wikipedia, antinomianism.
That's dope.
Me and
That's
I
dope.
remember me and Ashmaf talked about that in our list.
Yeah, I know y'all been going into all these.
Screenshot it and send it to me?
Yep, I got you.
So you looked up the word Jezebel
And yeah.
in the Greek?
Yep, you look up the word Jezebel, then as I looked it up when I was researching it, I seen antinomianism, and I looked up what antinomianism was, and I read that, and I was like, dang, that's Christianity. That's it.
Yeah, because what those
I'm gonna send you a link.
Okay.
what those woman bishops were doing pretty much, they were actually allowing their servants or the people that were under them in the churches to go to these different rallies and these different events that was going on there, and they was allowing them to take those foods that was sacrificed to idols and bring it back to the church. Again, knowingly that there was sacrifice to those idols, and they were doing those same practices within the church. She was pushing that pretty much like it's okay, it'll be all right, just
God
like in these
loves
churches,
you.
just like in these churches today.
Jesus is covering up.
Christmas tree in there, Easter egg hunts, all of that stuff.
Halloween parties.
Yeah, they was doing that, man.
Lock-ins.
No, not lock-in.
Hey,
New Year's lock-ins and shit.
oh yeah, man. Yeah. But that next part, what you about to read though, it goes right into what we're talking about.
Alright. Alright, verse 20, it says, notwithstanding, I have a few things against thee, because thou sufferest that woman Jezebel, which calleth herself a prophetess, to teach and to seduce my servants to commit fornication, and to eat things sacrificed unto idols.
Right there. That's what they was doing. It wasn't that they were just, let's say a beast was slain on Saturnalia and you got to eat. So we all to a degree have eaten things, but it's not willingly. We understand it's just food. They was actually going in, doing it, knowing what they was doing it for.
Overrating the guys.
Overrating the guys, and they was putting it into the church. So, because when you go into seduce, again, there was actual sex and things that was taking place. But first and foremost, there was spiritual fornication that was happening. That's why it says she seduced them to eat those foods sacrificed to idols. That's spiritual fornication against the Lord. And that's what they was pushing, man. It's more, it's, you got it.
Alright. Verse 21. And I gave her space to repent for her fornication, and she repented not.
Proud ass woman, man. Proud ass woman. Go ahead.
Behold, I will cast her into a bed, and them that commit adultery with her into great tribulation, except they repent of their deeds.
Yeah, man. And when you go into that bed is spiritual for a sick bed, pretty much. When you in a sick bed, you're laying there. Like for example, what's his name? Antiochus. And it's a lot of them. Pretty much, yeah, him. He was in that sick bed. He was stinking and all that stuff, doing to the things that he was done. But it's a lot more examples. When that's your deathbed, pretty much. You there, you sick, you stinking, this, that, and the third. That actually happened. So the people that was there in bed with her, worshiping those idols and all that Yahweh said that was going to happen. You guys was going to get put to death. So whether it was probably diseased, a lot of things that was going on. They was plagued.
So basically,
You know?
he said, I gave her a chance to repent, and I gave you a chance to repent.
Right.
None of you.
You know?
Yeah, Khan.
All right. Verse 23, it says, and I will kill her children with death, and all the churches shall know that I am he which searcheth the reins of the hearts.
See, when it's talking about kill her children with death, that doesn't necessarily mean her actual physical children. When you go into what a bishop is a head of a church, but also a father figure.
Yep.
You know, so she was more so like a mother figure to them, you know. And also too, just as a footnote, when you go into Thyatira, you had different priests that were worshipped, and later on they changed their names. They was called Augustinians and they were called Dominicans. And they pretty much pushed that woman worship of Mother Mary within their churches, worshiping Semiramis, because the city was called Semiramis. So they had that woman worship going on heavy within that city, and that influenced the church. And you had those priests. So you had those people that were under there, Mother Mary, whatever they were saying. They might have been saying Mother Mary, you know, but it was that woman worship spirit that was within that church. So he's saying, I'm going to cast you into a bed, and I'm going to cast all your children, meaning your followers, into that bed too. And you all going to die grievous deaths, you know. And we see it taking place today within these churches. That woman worship spirit, man, especially the Catholic Church. That's right, they rule them. Even church with these jakes, like crazy. They got these woman preachers, you know. Now who knows? The spirit could have been on her to repent and be like, look, y'all gotta step down. Y'all can't be heads. And she probably rejected it. You know what I'm saying? No, I'm still gonna be the head. Not saying it happened, but who knows? And then that's when he said that. You know, it makes sense because she's proud. Nigga woman proud as hell. You got it.
All right. And I will kill her children with death, and all the churches shall know that I am he which searches the reins and hearts. And I will give unto every one, and I will give to every one of you according to your works.
Mm-hmm.
But unto you I say, and unto the rest in Thyatira, as many as have this doctrine, and which have not known the depths of Satan.
That means how deep this devil will go, man, in rulership, like knowing the depths of them. When you're surrounded by it, it's, if you don't have the spirit on you, it's easy to get entangled with the things that are around you. And that's when you're going to search out the depths of Satan. You're going to really understand how he operates, man. You're going to be, when you're involved in it. But if you stay away from that, you ain't going to have to worry about the depths of Satan. Because you got the wings of Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shah over you. You covered, you know?
God. I will put upon you none other burden, but that which ye have already hold fast till I come.
Mm-hmm.
And he that overcometh and keepeth my works unto the end, to him will I give power over the nations.
And this is, and we all know this. You know what I'm saying? We can overcome all these things. I remember years ago I had an argument with the scoffer on the comment board because he was scoffing on one of my lessons. And this is what was going into it. And he was like, no, this is talking about Jezebel's people. Like, man, no, man. This is talking about if you overcome what's going on, man. This clearly talking about, yes, he was through. Me and the brother Zion out from D.C., this is when he was down here. And me and him was going back and forth with that dude. And dude was getting cut up. You know what I'm saying? But he was a proud Edomite, a Christian that didn't know nothing, man. You know, it just made me think about that situation. Because he actually thought it was a physical woman Jezebel back then. He thought that was really alluding to what was going on in 2 Kings. You know?
Oh boy.
Through. He shut him on.
And he shall rule them with a rod of iron, as the vessels of potter shall they be broken to shivers.
Yeah, so, you know, Lord willing, we overcome. But the ones that do overcome, it's rulership and being a joint heir with Yahweh Shai. You know, and what's written right here is just the reiteration of what was written of in Psalms. You know, how we going to pretty much have the nations in chains. You know,
Psalms, the 2nd chapter.
That's right. That's right. Why do the heathen rage and the Gentiles imagine a vain thing? You know.
All right, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron, as the vessels of a potter shall they be broken to shivers, even as I received of my father.
Mm-hmm.
And I will give him the morning star.
And that's Yahweh Shai. Mm-hmm. That morning star is Yahweh Shai. All right, because we read about it in Numbers yesterday at camp, how it says a star shall come out of Zion. And in Malachi, it considers Yahweh Shai being the sun of righteousness. And the first star that you see when you wake up in the morning is the sun. You know, So Yahushua is the morning star. And it ultimately pretty much just goes into the deeper understanding of Yahushua and of him dwelling within you. You know, being a joint heir with Yahushua. We're going to have that power if we endure. You know?
Quick precept.
Come.
2 Peter 1:19. We have also a more sure word of prophecy, whereunto you do well that ye take heed, as unto a light that shineth in a dark place until the day dawn and the day star arise in you.
That's right. That's right. Beautiful. Where was it at?
2 Peter 1:19.
Con. Beautiful.
He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches.
See, he said what the Spirit said to the churches, meaning take heed, all of us. Because just like it applied to them, it applies to you to this day. You know, we got ears. So this talking to us, man. This is just a reminder that all this stuff is still going on today. And we actually have eyes to see and we know what to watch out for. You know? So that Lord, when that was edifying, that was class. Hey, maybe next time I teach, I might do chapter 3. You know what I'm saying?
That's good, bro.
The water.
Hey, a lot of bar. Call all Yahweh Shem Shabbat.